It's a beautiful Thursday morning. Good morning and welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television International. I am Rachel Tanze and with me today is Lois Taraki.
Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning, Lois. How's your night?
My night was great.
How is the weather?
It's hot, but still okay.
It's just too humid and uncomfortable. I think that's the best word to explain or the weather. And then we would keep emphasizing on the fact to do whatever it takes, because we're seeing the outbreak of so many sicknesses. It has been on the papers throughout the week, and we would just like to keep emphasizing and say, you know what, there's measles out there, we have meningitis, and then we have Lassa fever. And as much as Lassa fever has nothing to do with the weather, we've seen it since last year, outbreak left, right, center, but we have those that are related to the weather. We're talking about measles, we're talking about meningitis. So do whatever it takes, you know, contact your physician, just know what you're supposed to take to boost your immune and what are the early symptoms, because there are certain levels, like for meningitis, that once you get there, there's no return for you. But then there's definitely preventive measures that could be taken. And I mean, it's not a health any day, it's just a beautiful Thursday, but yeah, the weather is not comfortable, so it's important to emphasize.
It's believed that as the weather changes, you know, people fall sick for malaria and
just,
you know, all of that. So it's very important that you take your health very important. When you feel any form of discomfort, you should visit a physician and take proper care of yourself, and then the environment,
and be hydrated,
of course, because the whole Lassa fever thing, when your environment is void of all of these rodents and all these things, I think it will help a lot. It's not, I know within the week we're always busy running helter-skelter, trying to make ends meet and going to work and all of that. But during the weekend, you should find time, or, you know, just clear your surroundings, clear the house, and
it's important.
Yes.
And put rat traps in case you have a lot of rodents in your house.
Rat gum or
something like that, yes.
Yeah.
All right, don't forget that we are live on Facebook and on YouTube, so please join us there. Drop your comments on what we'll be unveiling on the papers today. We need to know your opinion and what you think is the way forward. And I'll be starting with the first paper, which is the Daily Sun newspaper. And the big story on the paper: bell tolls for Edo deputy governor as 21 of 24 assembly members sign impeachment notice. You can find details on page 26. Tinubu African leaders, diplomats order hail African Development Bank President Adesina on our Leadership Award. You can find details on page 26. Bloody day in Benue. Family of 38 others killed in gang clashes. Appeal court bars EFCC from retrying Kalu. Soldiers kill 5 ESN members in Imo, rescue 15 hostages in Zamfara. Killing of farmers, Senate takes case to Tinubu. You can find details on page 27. Tinubu orders immediate release of grains to FCT residents. Tension as Bayelsa community shut Shell's flow station. We were seeing that there's been a back and forth since last year. Shell is leaving, but the community is saying there needs to be some compensation for the hazard and everything that has happened there. And I believe that this is also a follow-up on what is going on there. And we have a writer saying that government cautions against closure of oil facilities. You can find details on page 5. Nea Kalu Foundation donates study materials to St. Saviour's School in Lagos. You can find details on page 6. Court vacates order sacking Abure as Labour Party chairman. Obi will not leave party over smear campaign against national chairman. A statement coming from Ifo. You can find details on page 26 and 27. Open grazing in Abuja to end soon, a statement from Wike. You can find details on page 28. And then we have picture story where we can see the African Development Bank president receiving his Our Leadership Award, and then also that of Nea Kalu giving donation to the St. Saviour's School in Lagos. And that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
To Nigerian News Direct newspaper, from the top of the paper, we can find economic hardship. Lawmakers set up ad hoc committee to review minimum wage. CBN raises customs duty exchange rates by 1.1%. You can find more details on page 2 of Nigerian News Direct. Again, Edo Assembly moves to impeach Deputy Governor. More details you can find on page 4. I still see him everywhere. Wigwe's former PA Faleye. Bodija explosion. Court remands 3 over stockpiling of explosives. The big story here says Tinubu approves incentives, tax credits to deepen gas investments, and the rider calls for flexibility of local content policy contracting cycle to encourage investors. Orders NNPC to raise contract thresholds to $10 million minimum. Your investments in Nigeria's gas sector are safe. This is coming from Minister to investors, and you can find more details if you're so interested in this particular story on page 4 of Nigerian News Direct newspaper. More on the paper says epileptic power supply. Power Minister accuses DISCOs of failing to distribute power, summons TCN DISCOs MDs. More details you can find on page 4. Upon expiration of ultimatum, Benue government vows to prosecute violators of open grazing. And these are all the stories you can find on Nigerian News Direct newspaper.
On Leadership newspaper, 40 fared killed as militia gang clash in Benue. Sanusi weeps for Wigwe as many bid farewell. We have trending Binance pulls out of Nigerian market, and on numbers 767 manufacturers shut down operations in 2023, and I believe that by the first quarter of this year 2024 the number will actually increase. You can find details of both story on page 2. Zamfara exonerates state guards over Islamic scholar's murder. Details can be found on page 7. The big story, Tinubu to Nigerians, time will define our tough decisions. Extols Awolowo's leadership quality, signs executive order on oil and gas reforms. You can find details on page 4. CBN raises custom duty rate to 1,560 to $1. And when we've been seeing importers precisely pleading, we saw the CPPE, this is at the beginning of the week, saying that let the CBN peg the exchange for custom duty clearance rate and all of that to 1,000 to $1, because it is one of the reasons that we are seeing congestion at the seaport. We are seeing importers abandoning their consignments and all of that, and now we are seeing that the Central Bank of Nigeria is actually increasing it. So it's almost like they are paying deaf ears to the plea of importers, and also what will be concerning this clearance. And then it means that we talked about this, yes, that we are seeing how outrageous clearance fee is for imported. These are even fairly used vehicles, and then we can imagine what it will be now, since CBN have refused to list it and at least reduce it. They have actually increased it, and I don't know where the central bank is driving towards this concerning the increase, but we are seeing that it is an end to a mid one way or another. We don't have enough made in Nigerian cars for us to say we are trying to.
We have those made in Nigerian cars. How many people are patronizing actually it, buying?
We see them few.
We see very few of them on our roads.
And even if we will say let's patronize them, we don't have enough yet, whether we like it or not. That's one reality. And that is not how to go about that's not how to go about it. There's still a chain of demand, supply, and all of that. And before we get to that point, we need our solid minerals in play, most especially steel. We don't have any of that in play. But I think that, of course, it has nothing to do with wanting us to consume made in Nigerian. It's more about the central bank trying to control the foreign exchange market and putting everything in place to make sure that the currency, that is our naira, is gaining some value, and then seeing that, okay, if we keep increasing this, whether or not somehow the market will start going in favor of Nigerians. Now, I don't know the magic there. I don't know how it's going to play out, but it's going to mean more consignment being abandoned at the seaport. Whether we like it or not, it means custom is going to be losing. We've seen the estimate of how much the billions that they are hoping to gain for the year 2024, and we're looking at the first quarter where clearance has drastically reduced. Exactly. So custom will be losing money, revenue that should be generated will be, and above all, importers also will be losing money. And we are having an importer and exporter window as our exchange, and I'm just waiting to see what at the end of the day this will mean, because hey, it doesn't look good so far.
Really, it doesn't look good. Like we said the other day, people have invested, people have put their time, energy, money into all of this, and then abandoning these things. What will become of it if they eventually say they will not reduce? Like, okay, already they are saying they are not going to reduce the money like the importers want it to be. And now if they eventually abandon these things, or let's say they are able to clear it, how will the person buying, like how the market, how will it be?
It's going to be outrageous.
It's going to be outrageous, and so by so doing that, it's still not going to be favorable, because people will still, either ways you're losing money. Either ways.
Yes,
and I'm sure that most of these people would rather abandon this thing, the consignment there.
They will.
Than going to clear with so much money, and then at the end of the day,
they will not have buyers at the end of the day, because now demand will be less and supply will be higher. Who is most likely going to be losing money is these importers. Definitely not those in demand, because we have the law of demand and supply. And when supply outweighs the demand, because if people are no longer demand, but then you have consignments that you have to clear, then the person who will obviously be losing money is the supplier, and then is not going to be balanced in any way and all of that. But we'll just have to wait and see how things go.
Definitely.
Still on leadership newspaper, 300 Kano inmates have no records of any crime. This is very serious. You can find details on page 7. And I just hope that our judiciary do something about clearing these backlogs of criminals congesting our correctional centers and all of that. Shaibu heads to court to stop impeachment. Appeal court affirms Abure as Labour Party chairman. You can find details on page 7, and that's all the news on leadership newspaper.
The New Telegraph, the big story here says Nigerian farmers, we pay ransom to bandits at gunpoint to access our farms. Warrant of looting food prices, looming rather. FG's bid to guarantee food security a mirage with current insecurity. This is coming from AFN President. Benue herdsmen killed 20 family of 7 raise monarchs' homes. Victims given mass burial. Resident says, and the courage immediately. Senate mandates service chiefs. If you're so interested in this story, you can find it, more details of it on page 3, 4, and 6. From the top of the paper, CBN POS pushes ATM transactions down by 26.3% to 5.21 trillion naira. The ATM transactions are really going down, Rachel.
And whose fault is it?
You know, you go to the ATM, you hardly get cash there. You have to go to POS, and sometimes you're even scared of your card swallowed by the ATM, because there's a funny policy now that when it falls, you don't get it back from them. You have to go to your bank. If it's not your bank, you have to go there, or you know, and all of that. So people even prefer. The other day I went to the ATM, and then it's like the ATM was rejecting the card, and I was like, it's better I just take it out and look for another means of getting my cash. And another person that was behind me came and said, okay, let him try, or probably it's my card or it's my bank. So when he went, it was still the same thing. He said, let me better go and use POS. So, so you see, people are now opting to use POS now than even going to, because even if you go to the ATMs, you might not even get cash. The other day I went right, it was just Access Bank that had cash in their ATMs. Like all the other banks I don't well,
okay.
But it's really true that POS is pushing ATM transactions now.
Now, seeing this statement coming from the Central Bank of Nigeria, it only for me proves the fact that we are a reflection of our leaders. Now, this is the Central Bank of Nigeria, the mother to every other direct money deposit bank or the commercial banks as we know them. And you are here sounding as if you have no idea where POS came out from in the first place. Who is in charge? Who gave access to these POS operators to their POS devices? Is your bank, who are directly operating under you with your guidelines and your regulation. First of all, POS is in existence because of your failure to deliver as you have promised when it comes to the ATMs. That's what it is. As a result of that, we have more ATM points being closed down and more POS agents springing up. And you wonder who is to blame. We know who is to blame. First is you, the Central Bank of Nigeria. Then we go down to the deposit money banks and the commercial banks that you are dealing directly with, because you are the reason. Now, one of the things that we refuse to fail to agree is that anytime you use the money points, that is the POS, you are literally buying the naira. We call it service fee. It's not service fee. It's exchange for the currency. Is exchange. If you are paying 200 naira to access 100 naira, that is the exchange value. You can do you can divide that 10,000 by 200, whatever you get, that is the value for each 1,000 naira note that you are accessing. Either way, that is what it means. Forget that the fact that you call it charges. It's not charges. If it is charges, it should be more than 5 naira. In fact, our charges should be in kobles. It should be in kobles. If we're going to be realistic, those are charges. And it's not as you withdraw. It should be cumulative at the end of the month,
just like when you're using the ATM.
Exactly. So this is what it has become. And then for us to see the CBN coming back, giving this report saying it has, no, you are the reason. Your banks, the commercial banks that are in operation directly under you, have decided to say, you know what, we are not going to make this ATM to dispense as it should, because we are making more profit from the POS. Exactly. And therefore, you need to correct it, because I keep telling it, when you look at how the POS is for purchase, is for a cashless system. It's not for withdrawal. It's what you go, you finish shopping, you put it in, it gives you a breakdown of what you have bought, your total, how much has been deducted, and you move. It's simple as it is, but then we have now used it as a medium for buying our currency, because the banks are making more profit from it. And so for me, this is failure from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Don't make it look like it's some situation that you couldn't have been in control of. And then I'm just looking forward to a better Nigeria, that even our monetary policies and the way we handle money issues in the country will be better. If not, it doesn't look like we're making headways anywhere to a better economy regarding cash transactions and all of that.
Oh, the big story here says, okay, going down, we have hardship, additional calls for restructuring, devolution of power. You can find more details on page 2 and 5. I tried to dissuade Ogunbajo from traveling with Wigwe. This is coming from Fale. Poor Power Services, FG threatens discos with license revocation. Tinubu gives fresh directives on oil gas reforms. You can find more details on page 5 and 8 of New Telegraph newspaper. Reps demand living wage for workers. And appeal court stops FG's bid to retry Kalu slug over alleged money laundering. Jam OK's use of ordinary HP pencils in UTME mock examination. NPA, we are determined to consolidate our 2023 superior performance. An Edo Assembly begins impeachment process against Deputy Governor. You can find more details on page 2 and 5 of New Telegraph newspaper. And the last story here says, too little sleep increases diabetes risk, according to a study. And that's all the news stories you can find on New Telegraph newspaper.
On the Daily Times newspaper, the big story, Senate reps to confer with Tinubu as killings escalate in Benue, Katsina, and other states. You can find details on page 5. CBN sells fresh 1.3 trillion naira in T-bills at 21.5% to curb inflation. Federal government threatens to revoke license of discourse over poor power supply. On food crisis, Customs intercepts sacks of beans going to Benin Republic. Details can be found on page 4. Wike to ban open grazing in the Federal Capital Territory. APC leaders to Tinubu, you are failing. I truly hope that you will listen to your leaders, because in the past, if it came from an opposition party, it was tagged as a hangover for losing the election. Well, now it's coming from people in your party, and I hope that you listen to them. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 2. At the downside of the paper, FCT to commence distribution of palliatives in Abuja Council. You can find more details on page 2, and that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
Moving to The Guardian, the big story here says, deaths, unaccountable security votes may hobble state police plan. You can find details on page 6. Boko Haram strikes again, raises several homes in Borno. NPA to consolidate 2023 performance, reconstruct Tican Port. You can find details on page 4. Students lament unpaid scholarship, seek Tinubu's intervention. Nigeria's survival depends on food, health, housing agenda across states, says additional. Appeal court strikes out FG's bid to retry Oji Kalu on alleged 7.6 billion naira fraud. 37-year-old Nigerian lawyer turned caregiver dies in the United Kingdom. You can find more details of the story on page 8 of the Guardian newspaper. The last story here says, Edo Assembly begins impeachment process against Shuaibu.
And moving to the Nation newspaper, the big story, outages, minister threatens disclose with license revocation. Willful non-performance won't be tolerated. Distribution companies TCN summoned. APC draws battle line with governor over 16 lawmakers. Controversy trails killing of 30 in Benue. Family of 7 wiped out. 21 of 24 lawmakers signed Shaibu's impeachment notice. President pays glowing tribute to Harvard Week, where you can find details on page 27. Government unveils policy to drive investment in oil and gas sector. Awolowo's legacy's principles live on. This is a statement coming from Tinubu on the award giving. You can find details on page 28. NPA plans $1 billion reconstruction of Tin Can, One Port, and others. Apapa, Warri, Calabar also listed. You can start with the details on the front page. Bureaucracy, cash crunch, still e-passport issuance. At the downside of the paper, UCH doctors on strike over attack on colleague. And in Ekiti, APC chair dies. You can find details on page 5, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
First news, appeal court overrules APC. Silva on bias allegation against Guba Tribunal panel. I have no hand in Obaseki's renewed plot against Shaibu. This is coming from Oshomole. No crack in Rivers Assembly, says Speaker's aide. 300 inmates in Kano prison without records of any crime. This is coming from the police. I'll end open grazing in Abuja. This is coming from Wike, the FCT minister. And Gary no longer poor man's food as price surges by 105%. Rachel.
It's really sad, Lois. Because
well, but who says that it's poor man food?
it used to be because of its affordability.
Okay, yeah. Well, but I really don't. I totally agree with that, because if you want to drink gari, you know the things you have to add up to.
That's when you want to drink it rich man style. But the basic, let's talk about the basic way of taking gari.
But it's really sad that gari that used to be how much?
Yeah.
I know when I was growing up, it was like 14 naira.
I can remember it when yes, exactly, for a
Yes.
measure, because I was just going to say I can remember it when a cup was just like 20 naira. And of course we can remember, in fact there was a point in time I didn't even know gari was that cheap, to tell you
I
how
didn't
much
know
it wasn't
too.
even that much consumed, because after secondary school, for example, it was no longer a food anymore, because you took it at that time because it was just part of
was
what
part of your provision that you have to
exactly.
bring to the school.
But after that, it became something, if like once in a year, you feel like that was how gari was for me, not because I saw it as poor man's food, no, but just because it was one of those food that down here we are not known for eating eba, for example. So it's not that popular in our dishes and all of that. But now, at some point in time, let's not forget that our economy has been depleting for a while now. It became one of those things that people do have, because it's a quick fix when it comes to food, and it's just easier for you to just put in ingredients. But now it's actually expensive, and truth be told, is now at the price of what
maybe rice
used to be. Exactly, and now rice is just on another level. So now rice is more like an elite food. We can put it that way.
Gari is a rich
It's a rich man's food.
and then that one is an elite.
So it just shows what our economy has become, and I just hope we are waiting for these metric tons of grains that feels like is on a space journey down to earth. It feels like we are bringing it from somewhere. We're waiting for these grains to see if eventually it will be able to either make food accessible to the poor or be able to crash down the prices of goods in the market. Either way, this is what I'm expecting from the government soon, to show us that they truly feel what we are going through.
You know, it's really sad that it had to take this long, and then it had to take warehouses being vandalized and looted for all these things to come into play. Well, back to the paper. Reckless printing of money under Buhari caused inflation. This is coming from the finance minister, accuses ex-president's government of printing naira for 8 years without productivity. Still on the first newspaper, FG threatens to revoke discos licenses over poor electricity supply, summons AEDC, IBEDC and TCN. Address insecurity, high cost of living, not Shaibu's impeachment. This is coming from CRPP. Ibadan explosion, court remands woman, 2 others in prison. Amid dollar inducement allegation, Edo Assembly begins Shaibu's impeachment proceedings. The Reader says serves Deputy Governor notice of impeachment. Ekiti APC Chairman Omotosho dies. And these are all the news stories you can find on the first newspaper.
And at this moment, we would like to go on a short break, and when we return, we will still be live on Facebook and on YouTube. But for now, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zuma Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
welcome and thank you for staying tuned. If you're just joining us, it's still the Dailies on Echo Television International, and I'm still doing this with Lois Turaki. And moving on to the paper, on this day newspaper, NPA generated 501 billion naira revenue in 2023, reiterates $1 billion poor reconstruction plan, says implementation of performance improvement measures key. The Pobori NCDMB boards clash over staff redeployment orders in local content board. You can find details on page 16. Amid growing power cuts, Gencos record 27 billion naira capacity losses, post 4,700 megawatts stranded supply. You can find details on page 5. And a statement coming from Tinubu, Awolowo was victim of his ambition, hostile opposition, says he was a dependable ally of time and nation's hero. Celebrate Adesina for winning 2023 Awolowo Leadership Prize. African Development Bank President pledges support for President's bid to transform agricultural practice. You can start with the details on the front page. The big story on the paper, Wigwe's personal assistant, Falaye, narrates last encounter with his boss. Shetima, Macron, Sanusi orders pay, glowing tributes to late banking icon. VP says disease bloomed long before his co-travelers. How Wigwe flew accommodated me during my ordeal as Kano Emir. This is coming from Sanusi. You can find details of statement on page 18. Apabio takes on Alia over insecurity, queries his silence over Benue killings. More details can be found on page 34. We have picture story of Bafemi Awolowo Prize for Leadership Award ceremony, where we can see Vice President Shetima and the recipient of the award, Adesina, and then Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State, alongside other stakeholders, and that's all news on this day newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, from the top, we have FG threatens to revoke license of discos over poor power supply. EPL, the sports, Tuchel interested in returning to Chelsea to replace Pochettino. You can find details on page 16. Here it says Gallants as Akinwumi additional bags prestigious Awolowo Leadership Prize. Tinubu, several African presidents, diplomats, governors take turns to hail AFDB's President Pan-Africanism. On worsening insecurity, Akpabio Abbas to meet Tinubu. And the writer says, as soon as Senate reps meet President, resolutions will benefit entire country. This is coming from Akpabio. We can continue to come here every week to observe 1 minute silence. This is coming from Ndume. Akpabio says insecurity has abated under Tinubu as attacks are now isolated. United Nations condemns abduction of women, girls from IDP camps few days before International Women's Day. You can find details of this particular story if you're so interested in it on page 2 of the Matrix newspaper. Still on the Matrix newspaper, Appeal Court affirms Abure as LP chairman finds Apapa 1 million naira. AFDB President additional cautions Nigerian youths against Japa syndrome, says their future remains here. Fitch hails CBN over monetary policy tightening, says it's necessary to address economic challenges. You can find details of this particular story on page 11. And 20 years after Tubaba parts ways with Efe, Wigbe Thierry Sanusi reveals Herbert's role in his success as CBN's governor as Shetima eulogizes late banking whiskade. The last story here says Tinubu signs executive order to boost investment in Nigeria's oil and gas sector. And these are all the news stories you can find on the Matrix newspaper.
On Blueprint newspaper, alleged 7.6 billion naira fraud. Appeal court quashes federal government bid to rearrange ex-Abia Governor Kalu. Igwe bloomed long before his co-travelers. This is coming from Shetima. I believe the paper is shortening the name. Is Igwe bloomed long before his co-travelers, a statement coming from Vice President Shetima. And on business, CBN to continue monetary tightening amidst challenges, says Fitch. Pissarro thanks Nigerians, solicits support for Super Eagles. The big story, NAS to Pale Tinubu as terrorists kill 50 in Benue. Troops neutralize 5 IPOB gunmen in Imo, rescue Zamfara 15 kidnapped victims. 10 suspected killers of Islamic cleric murder nabbed. You can start with the details on the front page. 3 days after looting Abuja warehouse, Tinubu orders distribution of grains to residents. Foundation empowers over 200 in FCT. 8 years of printing money landed Nigeria in hyperinflation, a statement from Edun, the Minister of Finance. Tinubu signs executive orders on oil and gas reforms. And in Edo State, 21 assembly members sign deputy governor's impeachment notice. Truck kills graduate awaiting NYSC call-up in Abia State. 300 Kano prison inmates incarcerated without records of crimes, a statement coming from officials. And we hope that something be done quickly about that. You can find details on page 7, and that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
The Daily Independent says, the big story here says, rising insecurity, security architecture has failed despite enough appropriations. This is coming from the Senate. And the writer says, plans meeting President Tinubu. From the top, we have reps ask FG to shut down open drug markets, query capital market operators over unclaimed dividends, and raise committee to look into modalities for payment of living wages. Edo Assembly begins impeachment process against Deputy Governor Philip Shaibu. 45 feared dead in herdsmen militia attack on Benue communities. 30 injured, scores missing, displaced. You can find more details on page 7. Tinubu signs executive orders to boost investment in oil gas sector. You can find more details on same page 7. Air traffic controllers kick against proliferation of aviation agencies departments. The writer says, lament inappropriation recruitments in Nama. Alleged 7.6 billion naira fraud. Appeal court strikes out FG plea to retry ex-governor O.G. Kali. Additional makes case for Nigeria's restructuring welfarist policies. Says states have potential to become financially autonomous. The last story here says appeal court affirms Abure as authentic Labour Party national chairman. You can find details if you're so interested in this story on page 7 of Daily Independent newspaper, and that's all the stories you can find on that particular paper.
Starting with the big story on the Punch newspaper, 24 states can't pay salaries without federal government allocation. This is coming from the budget office. 24 states to pay 1.48 trillion naira salaries in 2024, but generate 914 billion naira in IGR. Governors advised to boost IGR. Ondo, Yobe, Sokoto, Plateau, Niger, Nasarawa, Adamawa, Cross River, Delta, Abia, others affected. You can find details on page 19. 30 killed in Benue, fresh attack, Senate to meet Tinubu. Federal government threatens to revoke discussed licenses, and CBN printing of 22 trillion naira under Buhari fueled inflation, a statement coming from Edu. Additional wins, Awolowo prices low productivity cost Africa $2.6 trillion yearly. And on minimum wage, labor slashes demand to 500,000 naira. Troops comb bushes for 101 abducted women, IDP homes burnt. Federal government foreign scholarship beneficiaries lament unpaid 8-month stipends. And I just hope that the federal government does something about this, because we are tired of seeing Nigerians in diaspora being stranded. And this is one of those cases, because it's one thing for you to give them this scholarship, and you know that depending on the country they are and depending on the kind of visas that they have, it's not all that you can be a student and work. So they are solely dependent on funds being sent from home to them. And I know of situations, I know in the past, I don't know if, of course, not in the Ukraine anymore, but for students in the Ukraine, one of their predicaments was that they cannot work. I know other states you get to work, I mean other countries with better GDPRs and all of that, you can work. But some, I know of family friends, I know of people who didn't find it easy in countries like Ukraine, in countries like Cyprus and all of that, because you cannot work, and Malaysia and all of that, you cannot work. And if there was any cut, I know of people who went to the level of begging to be able to eat every day. It was that bad. This is one-on-one encounter and all of that. You know these people and they went through something like that. So I'm just hoping that in as much as things are hard here in the country, it's not good enough for us to just sit down and say better them. It's not better them. The situation there is difficult for
them just say what they are going
through. It is a tough one.
It's
exactly.
Really a tough one for
so we just hope that they eventually get this stipend, because it's still bad image for Nigeria either way, that your students are stranded and the government is not able to take care of them, and before we know it, they become something else out there, because man has to survive, and later on they are being deported, and it's still just bad name. And we talk so countless time about how our green card is being seen, that is our passport, and if eventually this leads to something bad happening, it means more and more depreciation of the value of the West African and passport. So I just hope something will be done about that. You can find details of this story on page 13, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
Coming to Nigerian Tribune, appeal court affirms Abori as LP chairman, fines Apapa 1 million naira. Tinubu issues new policy directives to improve investment in oil and gas. FG threatens to revoke disco's licenses. The big story on the Nigerian Tribune newspaper says Africa turns out for additionals Awolowo Leadership Prize. And the writer says Tinubu, other African presidents, Obasanjo, Jonathan, governors, captains of industry, royal fathers, diplomats in Lagos for Awolowo. It is time to restructure Nigeria. This is coming from Additional. A compass for generation of leaders, says Tinubu, and says Nigeria will surmount its challenges. How award winners are chosen. This is coming from Ayaoku, and Additional is like Awu. This is coming from Tanzanian president, and you can find more details of the story on page 7 and 8 of the Nigerian Tribune. Coming down to the paper on insecurity, Senate to meet Tinubu, and our security architecture has failed woefully. This is coming from Ahmed Lawan. We are tired of 1 minute silence, according to Ndume. Edo Assembly begins impeachment process against Deputy Governor Shaibu. And you can find more details on page 7 of Nigerian Tribune. Family of 7, 33 others killed as militia groups clash in Benue. OPWS commander confirms 20. And it's really important that the Senate are going to meet Tinubu. This is not the first time, of course, but it's still a good step that they still have people, you know, the plight of the people. They still see that there's a need. I'm happy that they said they are tired of 1 minute silence every time. And the whole country is tired of hearing these people killed, this number of people killed, and, you know, hunger is there and people are still being killed. It's just a lot on Nigerians. So it's good that they are planning to meet the president, and I hope that they make headway. It's not just going to be another meeting, but that this one is going to have a better outcome, and people will stop being killed for nothing, for no reason. And this Benue issue is becoming really quite alarming, because aside the killings and the farmer headers clash, we still have the party issues there. We still have political issues in the party, and then everything is going down, and it still boils down to the new governor. He's still new in office, and he's still faced with so many challenges. And then, you know, it's still being said that he's quiet about
he's being called out about that.
And he's being called out about being silent. And I feel he is in a very strategic place that needs serious attention. He should not be silent, because as a leader, people are looking up to you for a lot. You are the eye of that particular state, and Benue is a very strategic state, the food basket of the nation. So, you know, even when we are having issues of insecurity and all these political clashes in that state that is supposed to provide food for the nation, it's still going to be, you know, it still boils down to the issue of food insecurity as well.
And I just hope that in Governor Alia's silence, he is working on the ground. Let's see results, because, you know, over time we've had so much talk and no results. Let's hope maybe he's just going to be a silent but destructive governor when it comes to fighting insecurity in the state. Let's just hope that when he speaks, action follows, and then eventually the people of Benue will be able to say we have a governor that have us in hand, but in mind. But for now, speaking is not just it. Yes, should he say something about it? Hopefully, but I just hope that when he eventually speaks, it's being followed with action, because it's the action that matters eventually in all of this.
You know, most times Nigerians, even if you're not going to act, you should say something. You cannot just leave them like that. Let the president say something, let the governor say something, but then we need him to say something to his people and then act. Not just say together, like you have said, he should say and then do something, because I know that it has been noticed that he has been silent and then there's no action to back that particular silence. That's why he's being called out for this particular thing. So he should do something. If not, he's going to lose relevance in his state and lose popularity, and that's nothing I think a politician will want for his career.
True.
And that's all the news stories you can find on Nigerian Tribune.
On Punch Sport Extra, Boniface to return in March. We have Ancelotti risks 5-year jail term. Desa's deadly marksman. You can find details on page 6. And ahead of the games, we have Pro versus Liverpool, Reds favorite ahead arena trip. And we have champions reach the quarterfinals, that is Man City. Ajibati wins Atletico Potem's award. And then we have United reject Bellingham, Haaland. Saka linked with £120 million PSG move. And we have Caicedo still adapting at Chelsea. No magic can fix United. This is coming from Solskjaer. You can find details on page 4. Bellingham gets 2 games ban, and on African Games, Nigerians shine in table tennis. The big story, NFF tells Punch Sports Extra, Egu not Eagles coach, and that's all the news on Punch Sports Extra.
Now on Business Day newspaper and the very last newspaper, weak transmission, Disco struggles plague power sector. And another story here says Gary price doubles as cassava output shrinks. And these are all the news stories you can find on the Business Day newspaper.
Lois, thank you for doing this with me today.
Thank you for always having me.
Yes, and to our viewer out there, thank you for not going anywhere. Thank you for being a part of the Dailies this morning. Until we come your way tomorrow, goodbye.